Welcome to Parent Solution, everyone. And today we have here with us Paula Kettula. Welcome, Paula, to our show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and dive into these important parenting questions.
Yes. And Paula, let me introduce you all to Paula. Paula is a transformational parenting coach who has been serving parents, children, and adults for more than 20 years. And she is licensed clinical social worker, and she loves supporting children and parents. So
That's
today,
right.
Paula, yeah, wonderful. Today, Paula decided to talk about self-compassion and why it is important for parents to learn. So tell us
Yeah.
more about it, Paula.
Yeah. So self-compassion is, well, it's important for everyone. But what I've learned in my 20 years of working with parents and children as well is that it's especially important for parents because parenting is the most difficult job in the world. And many times it's also very unrewarding. There's a lot of challenges in that. So what I've noticed a lot of parents do, they start judging themselves, they start criticizing themselves, they start feeling like they're a failure. I'm not doing the right things. What's wrong? And the kids keep acting out. And when they get to teenagers, then they start talking back. Like it just can be really, really like brokenhearted. I think is the experience for a lot of parents. This
Messy,
experience
you
of
can
how
say?
messy and broken hearted. So when that critical self-judgment is there, it doesn't help the situation at all because the cost of self-judgment is insecurity, lack of confidence, not trusting yourself as a parent. It causes and creates more anxiety and depression, helplessness. Yeah, the list goes on, right?
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
and what I see a lot often also is that the things that parents struggle with, like I'd say 90% of the time, the behaviors for the children are actually normal to any child around the globe, right? But it is very hard for the parents to have expectations. And sometimes it's just a lack of information too, information about child's development. Like, hey, you know what? It's totally normal for a little 2, 3 year old to be quite aggressive, to bite, kick, scream, yell, rage, even have aggression, this primal aggression. So sometimes parents are like, what's wrong with my child? And then they start internalizing that. So that is where self-compassion comes in. And so compassion, let me start with compassion first. And a lot of the work that I want to say this here in the beginning, a lot of the work that I'm sharing right now, this information that I'm sharing is coming from Kristin Neff, Neff. And she's one of the primary researchers of self-compassion. That's her life's work. So definitely check it out. She has a couple cool books out there. So compassion is the ability to recognize the suffering in another person, to really see their pain, to see their wound, and to witness that and to almost be in it with that person. Like as a therapist, I get to have a lot of compassion for all kinds of people and that have had all kinds of different experiences. And we know that the experience of compassion, like, so when we feel compassion, it actually has a very peaceful and calming and soothing effect to the nervous system. So that's what happens when we experience compassion versus judgment. Now, self-compassion is seeing, witnessing, recognizing your own pain and own suffering. And that's all it is. It's holding that pain and holding it and embracing it. Like Thich Nhat Hanh talks about, like, hold it like a little baby, your own pain. So that's what self-compassion is. And there's lots of benefits from that. It really helps our nervous system calm down, decreases the stress response.
Let me just ask you what you just said, like holding on to our pain or just acknowledging it and being in that. That's what you said?
That's what I said, which is
Absolutely.
very much
Like
opposite a
not
lot of
pushing it
you.
away, not pushing it
That's
away,
right.
really owning it. It's
Yeah.
mine and I'm acknowledging it that what I'm feeling is true and real. And there is
Yeah.
no way I can just throw it out. That will be a
No.
myth. Yeah.
Yeah. There is no way. We can't run away from ourselves. It's impossible. And one of the biggest misconceptions in terms of really recognizing our own pain and suffering and our own wounds is that, oh gosh, it's gonna get worse. It's gonna be worse. I'm gonna get stuck there. I'm gonna get stuck there in the pain for
Anxiety.
years. Anxiety, fear, because it's very likely we were never taught emotional intelligence. We were never taught how to be with our emotions. So we tend to push them away. We tend to not be even aware of a lot of our emotions. For some reason this week with my clients that I'm working, anger is coming up. Like, so anger meaning like people not even being aware of their anger. You know, so I celebrate every moment my client is like, oh, I've been so angry and I've never felt this angry. And I'm like, yay, that's great. Now we can move forward. Because beyond that, anger is usually things like sadness and grief and shame even. And unless we get to those underlying feelings, then we keep suffering anyways. Also, joy is there, love is there, you know, all those things. So that's where self-compassion is important, because it really disrupts that negative thinking patterns. You know, those that really bully that we all have sometimes inside of ourselves, or the perfectionistic part of us that feels like everything has to be just so. So it really helps to stop that. And because when we engage in those negative thinking patterns, we keep reinforcing it, and then it creates stress in our body. And so not only do we disrupt the negative thinking patterns, self-compassion fosters positive emotional experiences and positive thinking that creates well-being, really. So that's a benefit of it. And you know, really ultimately, like, yeah, it just creates more happiness. So is that all making sense, Vilta?
It is making absolutely sense, a lot of sense. So can you please, for our viewers, for me, for everyone who is really struggling with this self-compassion, can you just simplify it for us, how to go there, how to be there? Just give us some steps or tips, whatever you have.
Yes. So Kristin Neff says there's three components to self-compassion.
Like three tips.
Like three components, and then there's lots of different practices. So I'm going to share the three components, and then I'm going to share some tips as well, how to create self-compassion, how to be more compassionate towards yourself. So the three components are, it starts with what we talked about already, the recognition of one's pain. Like we said, compassion is the witnessing and seeing another person's pain. Self-compassion is just like, ouch, you know, that hurts, I'm hurt, and just being with it, just acknowledging it, like you said, recognizing it. We can't change anything unless we own it and accept it and recognize it. So that's kind of number one. And second component is what Kristin Neff calls common humanity, meaning we all suffer. We all have trauma. We all have suffering in our lives in our own ways. We are not different from one another. You know, we might live in different cultures. We might have different color of the skin and hair and culture that we are in. But in a very fundamental level, one thing that unites us for sure is that experience of suffering, which is part of being a human being.
Being a human.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So understanding that, hey, I'm actually not alone. Like for parenting, if you're struggling as a parent, there's so many parents struggling with exactly the same things as you are. And there's some comfort in that, because we realize that, yeah, we're not alone in this experience, and that this is part of being a human being. And also, how do I then overcome this, and how do I really turn this suffering into a gift? Like I say, I'm also a trauma therapist. So one thing that I also say when people start trauma therapy is that there are gifts in your trauma. There's purpose and meaning in the suffering if we have the mindset to look at it and find it. So that's a common humanity. And then the third piece, which is an important piece, is kindness. Being kind to ourselves instead of critical. Like it's so easy to be kind to our friends and people that we love, and then we forget about being kind to ourselves. And without a mindfulness, we are not sometimes even aware that we are being really critical of ourselves. I used to have this pattern. I have stopped it now, but I used to call myself idiot. Like, oh, I would do something, like, didn't matter, like a minor thing. My immediate automatic response was like, what an idiot. What an idiot. And for the longest time, I thought it's just a normal thing, you know? And I thought there's this thinking behind self-criticism that, okay, if I'm critical at myself, then that's going to motivate me somehow to do better. It doesn't. It's a slap in the face, and it pushes down, holds us small in so many ways. So those are the three components of self-compassion. So yeah, how do we build it? So one thing is, so we talked about this ability that we all have to be kind towards others. So one cool exercise, and this really is a practice, self-compassion can be learned, it can be practiced. It takes a lot of practice. It takes intentional focus. So one way you can create self-compassion is write a letter to yourself as if a kind, compassionate friend would write it to you. So you sit down and you write that letter to yourself from the eyes of this kind and compassionate self. But as you're doing it, you also notice like, wait a minute, like it's actually me writing that letter. So that kind, compassionate part inside of you is very much alive and it exists. So it's not like we don't have it, we do. We actually biologically have a caretaking system in our brain and our nervous system. So that's what we are activating with this sort of letter writing exercise.
That's a very great idea. That's going to benefit a lot of people, I'm sure.
Yeah. And then another very simple one is give yourself a hug. It could look like this, and kind of squeezing yourself, closing your eyes, or sometimes it's just holding your heart, like just really holding your heart and giving yourself comfort and nurturing and care. So biologically, even if it's us touching ourselves, there's certain neurochemicals that are already working, like oxytocin, that creates a sense of like peace and calm when we just like hug ourselves like this. So it's giving yourself a comforting hug and be the comforter. Sometimes parenting can be lonely. There's nobody else to, praise you or tell you how good of a job you're doing. So you gotta give it to yourself. So those are just two examples. And then using the 3 steps, just like I said, like you could just meditate on them, close your eyes, take deep breaths, and then, okay, being with the pain, noticing how the pain feels in your body, where it's located in your body, then I'm not alone. Everybody suffers. And then using some kind words towards yourself. Like you would soothe a little child, you soothe yourself the same way.
Thank you for sharing all this with us, Paula. And for you all viewers, if you want to know more about Paula and reach out to her, I will be putting her website link in the description box. Go and reach out to her. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you. Of course. Yeah, please do reach out.
Okay. Bye-bye. Take care.